Welcome back, and thank you for joining us on the Live Unreal with Glover U podcast, where every week Jeff Glover will dive deep into the questions that you are asking. He understands the challenges you are facing on a day-to-day basis because he still works every day on the front lines of real estate, with him and his team closing over 1,000 homes per year. Today, we will continue our 4-part series on how to kill it with open houses this summer. On today's episode, we are on part 2, getting started with visitors. We will learn from Jeff how to provide a high level of service to your future clients from the beginning. Now, let's hear from Jeff Glover.
Point number 2. Always remember the buyer searching agent's stat. Always remember the buyer searching agent's stat. And I'll share that with you now. Buyers searching agents. Always remember the buyer searching agent's stat. This is an important one because this is not only a statistic based on what the National Association of Realtors tells us, but it's also a mindset. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So the National Association of Realtors says, and by the way, it's been a few years since I've checked this, so this number might be even higher. I would guess that this number has gone up, not down, because open houses are popular today, more so than they were 5 years ago. The National Association of Realtors says that the average buyer shops 7 agents before they select one. They have some sort of contact, face-to-face, over the phone, email, with 7 agents before they pick the agent that's going to write the offer for them. 7. In contrary to that, by the way, a listing is like 1.5. They'll interview one, it's 1.5 because it's an average. But most sellers will interview 1 to 3 agents to sell their home. But when they're buying, a buyer has on average contact with 7 realtors before they say, yeah, let's write an offer on this one. So my mentality is that I'm going to be number 7. Everyone that walks in has already met 1 through 6, and I'm going to be that number 7. So I keep that in the back of my mind at all times, because even when they say, well, yeah, we're working with agents. Well, do you have a contract with an agent? Well, no, we don't have a contract with an agent. Working with agents is a smokescreen. Whenever you hear them say, oh, yeah, we've got an agent or we're working with agents, okay, I can certainly appreciate that. You mean you have a contract with an agent? Now, if they have a contract with another agent, legally you can't do that. All right, so that's why I would just follow it up with, oh, you're working with another agent? Perfect. You have a contract with an agent? Oh, no, we don't have a contract. We just have someone that's showing us homes. No problem. And then I just continue as if I almost didn't even hear that at all, because that's perfectly legal to do, by the way. And I'm not saying I'm trying to coerce them away from their agent. I'm just trying to provide a higher level of service, which I'm sharing with you, and will continue to share with you how we do that. So never forget, or always remember, depending on how you wrote it, the buyer's searching agent stat. It's an average of 7 agents before they select an agent. All right, point number 3 or 2, whatever one we're on. I'm out of order now. The guest registry, very key tool in an open house. Very key tool in an open house. The basic guest registry, right? Name, phone number, email address, source. I've seen some different ones that have more options. I like to keep it simple. It's name, phone number, email address, source. Source being, how did you hear about the open house? I like to know how they heard about it. Couple keys here, all right? It's not just a matter of, yeah, here's our guest registry, go ahead and sign in. I'm going to give you how you get good information. Number 1, first things first, when you get to an open house, you always fill out a dummy attendee. A dummy attendee at the top. Meaning you're writing in a name, an address, a phone number, an email, how they heard about the house. You're filling that in. It can be, you can make it up. I'll never forget when I first started doing open house, it was the parents of my very first girlfriend, right? I don't know, their name sounded fine to me, and I remember the address, and I remember their phone number. So every single time I did an open house, those were my first attendees. Well, why did I do that? Because history repeats itself, and consumers will follow suit with the person before them. So if you fill out a dummy all the way across, the next person that comes in is more likely to give you all of the information you are asking for. If it's blank and they're the first attendee and they write their name and their cell phone number, guess what the next person will do? They'll write their name and their cell phone number. They'll leave off their email, they'll leave off their address, they'll leave off how they heard of it. Which brings me to my next point. If number one attendee, which is you, is filled out completely, and your number two attendee comes into the open house, and let's say they leave off their email address, not uncommon, or their phone number. They leave something off. As soon as they leave, you go in and fill in a fake one. Otherwise, what will start to happen is your guest check-in will start to look like an upside-down Christmas tree. Like every single person that comes in behind them will start giving you less and less information. So if number two comes in and they leave their phone number off, when they leave, you write in a fake phone number. So that way when number three comes in, they give you all of the information that the person above gave, because it's appropriate to follow suit. All right, I will tell you that has caused me to gain a lot of leads through the years by doing the dummy attendee. So the third thing I'll tell you on that is and by the way, when you have busy open houses, this is important. As soon as they leave and you fill in the dummy information, either keep a yellow pad. I'm old fashioned, so I use yellow pads a lot. Keep a yellow pad, or what I used to do is just flip my open house guest registry over, and I would just write the number two. And next to number two, I would say, fake phone number, just started looking, moving from Plymouth, need to be in a home in 90 days. So I'm writing some things about my conversation with them so I remember. All right? Again, these are all lessons I've learned through the years. Otherwise, you have an open house where you have 10, 12, 15, 30 people through, you're not going to remember everyone. Even if you had a great conversation, you're going to get them mixed up. So after everyone leaves, after one person leaves, I turn it over, I write it down. Now here's the deal. I got the question yesterday. Well, what happens when it's chaotic? Well, you have a couple options there. Some agents I've heard, by the way, I feel like I can handle, maybe 2 groups, 3 at the most by myself. All right, I've heard of, and I'm not necessarily endorsing this, but I can see why it would be effective, but I could also see why it could turn some people away. Making people wait outside until one group is done. Well, if it's a busy, crazy one, you got a line all the way across the street. May not be a bad thing for the neighbors to see that, but I have had agents say that that's how they handle it. When they have multiple people come through, they just say, hey, if you guys wouldn't mind waiting outside for a few minutes, these guys are just finishing up. And then they wait outside, and as soon as they leave, so that way you're 100% focused on one person. If it's going to be chaotic and you know it's going to be chaotic, well, how am I going to know it's going to be chaotic? Okay, just know what's selling and what's sitting, right? If you got a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath ranch, $150,000, probably going to be chaotic. Bring a second agent, all right? Or the third thing that you can do is essentially talk to them in a group. All right, so yeah, they just came in. If you guys wouldn't mind, just wait a second, right? So that way everyone's getting the same spiel and everyone's kind of going their way through the house, which I'll talk about how that works in a second. So there's a couple different ways that you can handle that. You do what's most comfortable for you. I was okay with 2 to 3 groups. I felt like I could manage 2 to 3 at a time. How I got them to sign in, which this is an important script, is, hey, thanks for coming to the open house. I'm excited to have you here, and I'm sure the sellers are too. If you wouldn't mind, this is an occupied home, or whether it's occupied or not. The sellers have requested that everyone sign in. I'm putting it on the seller. 2 things happen there. Number one, psychologically, they're thinking, okay, well, if this was us, I guess I can kind of respect that if this was our house. And number 2, the seller requests that you sign in. I'm taking them to it. They're seeing the sign-in sheet where everyone else is signed in. Unless it's your second attendee, then they're just going to see the one there. All right, so the seller has requested that you sign in, not necessarily me. All right. That's your guest registry. Point number 3, which I already mentioned, but I'll repeat it again. Point number 3 is make sure you're keeping notes on each client after they leave. I used to do that on the back of the guest registry. If the open house is busy, you might not be able to get to it, so just do it on a separate yellow pad. And I'm not talking a full paragraph. I'm just talking 3-4 sentences of what you remember. Okay. Point number 4. Let's talk about the flyer for the open house for a second. All right, so very simple. Okay, flyer of the property. It can be the MLS flyer. It can be a nice flyer that you put together on Canva or one of the other marketing sites, Michael Lewis Marketing Suite. I know there's some good ones out there. On the back side, I want to show my credibility and my knowledge of the neighborhood, and I want to have the actives, pendings, and solds within a half mile. Now, depending on how many houses, if I'm in a more rural area, which, by the way, I don't recommend open houses in rural areas, There's two types of open houses that get there's three types of open houses, by the way, that get the least amount of traffic. You ready for them? These three types of properties get the least amount of traffic. Number one, homes located in rural areas. Number two, condos, unless it's like, a high-rise downtown area where condos are like prominent. And number three, listings that have been on the market for more than 2 to 3 weeks. Been on the market for 2 or 3 weeks. By the way, if it's been on the market for more than 2 or 3 weeks, you can have good traffic to an open house if you get a price reduction. So, if you want to put in the margin there, that rule, there's like an exception to that rule. 2 or 3 weeks since it's been listed or since the last price reduction. Because a price reduction is like a brand new listing. So I got my actives, pendings, and solds on the back. Okay, I have a list. If I know of other open houses that are taking place, I've got a list of them. Resource or single point of contact. So if I'm doing an open house in Livonia, Michigan, let's say, I'm going to go on Zillow or go on the MLS and I'm going to find all the other open houses in Livonia, Michigan. And I have no problem sharing that with the buyer when they come in because I want to be their single point of contact. So I'm a resource to them. That's something they're not getting in the other open houses. And then the last thing I wrote down is a neighborhood fact sheet. It's almost like a neighborhood cheat sheet. And it's basically a cheat sheet of the elementary school, the middle school, the high school. The distance to Starbucks, the distance to a grocery store, the distance to clothing stores, the distance to the local mall, the closest parks, their names, the closest lakes. It's almost like a neighborhood cheat sheet. 2 reasons why I think it's beneficial to do one of these. And the reason why it came up is because the point I had shared was get familiar with the neighborhood before you go. You're going to get questions like, which elementary school does this neighborhood feed to? They mostly already know the school district, but they don't know the elementary school. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Number one, you're educating yourself, because these are things that probably could come up in the open house and questions for buyers. And number 2, again, you're providing a value which causes you to stand out, something that other realtors may not be doing. All right, so a neighborhood cheat sheet or fact sheet. And of course, when we're talking about what else is at the open house, at the table there, you've got the sign-in sheet, you got those things I just mentioned. It's very common nowadays. They have bottles of water and cookies laid out, and you want to dress it up and make them feel warm and comfortable. Just make sure the presentation's nice. I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of stuff on that. You can use your imagination on that stuff. A couple of agents did mention that when I asked them, okay, what are some things that you're seeing in 2019 that are different? People are doing, like if they're on Sundays, like mimosas now, depending on the crowd and depending on the price range, or giving away swag bags that might include koozies or pens or things like that. So you can dress up the presentation as much as you want. Greeting and getting the seller to sign in. Again, the seller requested script. You walk them to the kitchen directly. And here's a key, as basic as it sounds, don't talk to them while they're filling in that guest registration form. Do not talk to them. You'll distract them. And guess what will happen? It's natural, especially for you high eyes, right? You want to talk and you want there to be stuff going on all the time. I want to be building rapport. What do you mean don't talk to them? The second you start talking to them, here's what happens. Oh, yeah, we've been looking for a few months now, but yeah, we're kind of serious. We're getting to the point where we're really serious. They stop filling out the guest registry because you just engaged them in a conversation. So let there be, 60 seconds of silence while they're filling that out. It's okay if maybe you want to chit-chat if there's 2 of them with the other for a bit while one of them's filling it out. But I'm telling you, even there, I would question that because then it's like the one that's filling out wants to get involved in that conversation. So even though there's a little bit of silence and it might, bless you, it might feel a little bit awkward, don't talk to them while they're filling out that sheet.
Thank you for taking your time to join Jeff today on the Live Unreal with Glover U podcast. To get started on killing it with open houses, take the real estate self-assessment. After you complete the assessment, a member of Glover U will get on a call with you to create an action plan to improve your score. Go to www.gloveru.com/self. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. Search for Live Unreal with Glover U on iTunes, Podbean, or Spotify and subscribe today. Until next time, remember, the average buyer shops 7 agents before selecting one.